They finally found you, but they didn't find you because you were searching for attention. They found you because your presence became impossible to ignore. Palette soul. There is something about the way you survived, the way you stayed silent, the way you kept moving when nobody understood you. You thought you were being overlooked, but you were being observed. You thought you were forgotten, but your strength was being measured. And now the people who underestimated you are beginning to realize something terrifying. You were never operating at their level. Your greatest power was hidden inside the part of you they could never understand. So don't ignore this message, because the next chapter isn't about proving who you are. It's about finally becoming everything you were capable of being. There comes a moment in your life when you stop explaining yourself. Not because you have nothing to say, not because you have become cold, and certainly not because you are afraid. You stop explaining because you finally understand the difference between being misunderstood and being misrepresented. You realize that some people aren't looking for the truth. They are looking for a version of the truth that makes them comfortable. And that's when your silence becomes powerful. You used to feel the need to defend every decision. If someone misunderstood your intentions, you wanted to correct them. If someone judged your character, you wanted to prove them wrong. If someone questioned your ability, you wanted to show them what you could do. But eventually, you learned something that changed everything. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. Some battles are distractions disguised as challenges. Some people will provoke you simply to watch you react. They want evidence that they still have emotional control over you. They want you to become angry, defensive, frustrated, or desperate to prove yourself. But when you remain calm, something changes. Their strategy loses its power. Your silence says, "You don't control me." Your composure says, "I know who I am." Your consistency says, "I don't need your approval." That is not weakness. That is mastery. There is a strange power in becoming comfortable with being misunderstood. You stop trying to convince everyone that you're a good person. You stop chasing people who have already decided to see you negatively. You stop wasting hours constructing explanations for people who wouldn't listen, even if you gave them the truth. Instead, you begin investing that energy into yourself. While they are discussing your life, you're building it. While they are analyzing your mistakes, you're learning from them. While they are waiting for you to fail, you're becoming more disciplined. While they are expecting an emotional reaction, you're becoming emotionally intelligent. And eventually, your results begin speaking a language that arguments never could. This is why you should never underestimate quiet people. Silence doesn't always mean emptiness. Sometimes silence means observation. Sometimes it means healing. Sometimes it means strategy. Sometimes it means someone is gathering their strength before they make their next move. You may have spent years feeling invisible because people didn't recognize what was happening inside you. But perhaps being overlooked gave you something attention could never give you. Space to develop without interference. You were able to grow without announcing every step. You were able to rebuild without asking permission. You were able to discover yourself without constantly performing for an audience. And now you're beginning to understand that your worth was never determined by how loudly people talked about you. Your worth existed before their recognition. Your potential existed before their approval. Your strength existed before they noticed it. So stop begging people to see what they have chosen not to see. Let them misunderstand you if they must. Let them underestimate you. Let them believe whatever story they need to believe. You have something more important to do. You have a life to build. You have a mind to strengthen. You have promises to yourself to keep. You have a future that requires your attention. And the most powerful thing you can do now is remain focused. Don't announce every move. Don't explain every transformation. Don't reveal every plan. Work quietly. Grow quietly. Heal quietly. Build quietly. Then let the results introduce the person you've become. Because one day, the same people who thought your silence meant weakness may realize they were watching someone develop an extraordinary level of self-control. And by then, you won't need to explain anything. Your life will have already answered them. You may look back at some of the hardest chapters of your life and wonder why you had to experience them. Why did certain people leave when you needed them most? Why did opportunities disappear just when you thought everything was finally coming together? Why did you have to face rejection, disappointment, betrayal, loneliness, and uncertainty? At the time, those moments probably felt like punishment. But sometimes what feels like destruction is actually preparation. Your struggles built a mind that couldn't easily be broken. Every difficult season taught you something that comfort never could. When life became uncertain, you learned how to keep moving without having all the answers. When people disappointed you, you learned not to place your entire identity in their hands. When plans failed, you learned how to create new ones. When you were forced to stand alone, you discovered that being alone and being powerless were never the same thing. You became stronger in places nobody could see. That's why you should never be ashamed of the chapters that challenged you. You don't have to pretend they didn't hurt. You don't have to romanticize the pain. Some experiences genuinely broke your heart. Some losses changed you permanently. Some nights were filled with questions you couldn't answer. But look at you now. You're still here. That fact alone means something. There were moments when you thought you had reached your limit, yet somehow you found another breath. There were mornings when you didn't feel ready to continue, yet you continued anyway. There were situations that made you question yourself, but eventually you learned how to separate temporary failure from permanent identity. That's growth. Your past doesn't have to become your prison. It can become your training ground. Think about everything you've survived. Every rejection that redirected you. Every closed door that forced you to search for another entrance. Every person who walked away and accidentally taught you how to stand on your own. Every mistake that showed you what not to repeat. Every failure that forced you to become more disciplined. None of it has to be wasted. The question isn't always, why did this happen to me? Sometimes the better question is, what did this teach me? That question puts power back into your hands. Maybe that rejection taught you patience. Maybe that betrayal taught you boundaries. Maybe that failure taught you preparation. Maybe that lonely season taught you self-respect. Maybe the period when nobody believed in you forced you to become the first person who truly believed in yourself. And that's a powerful transformation. Because once you stop seeing yourself as a victim of everything that happened and start seeing yourself as the person who can learn from everything that happened, your mindset changes. You stop saying, "My past ruined me." You start saying, "My past trained me." You stop saying, "They broke me." You start saying, "They showed me what I needed to strengthen." You stop saying, "I lost everything." You start saying, "I discovered what actually matters." That doesn't mean every painful experience was good. It means you refuse to let pain have the final word. Your scars become reminders, not instructions. They remind you that you've survived before. They remind you that difficult seasons eventually change. They remind you that you can rebuild. So when your next challenge arrives, don't immediately assume it's the end. Remember the person you were during your hardest chapter. Remember how far you've already traveled. You've survived uncertainty before. You've survived disappointment before. You've survived being underestimated before. And you can survive this too. Your strength isn't proven by never struggling. It's proven by refusing to let struggle permanently define you. The world may only see where you are now, but you know what it took to get here. And that knowledge gives you something powerful. Confidence that isn't based on applause. You know you can fall and rise. You know you can lose and rebuild. You know you can be misunderstood and still remain true to yourself. That is the mind nobody can easily break. So carry your past differently. Don't carry it like a chain. Carry it like evidence. Evidence that you endured, evidence that you learned, evidence that you grew, evidence that there is more strength inside you than you once believed. The chapter that almost destroyed your confidence may become the chapter that created your courage. And one day, you'll look back and realize you weren't being buried. You were being built. There comes a moment when you realize you don't need to compete with everyone around you. You don't need to prove that you're smarter, stronger, more successful, or more important than someone else. The moment you stop chasing comparison is the moment you begin building something far more powerful. Your own standard. For too long, you may have measured yourself through other people's reactions. If they praised you, you felt valuable. If they ignored you, you questioned yourself. If someone achieved something before you, you wondered whether you were falling behind. If someone doubted you, you felt the pressure to prove them wrong. But that's a dangerous way to live, because when your identity depends on comparison, someone else's success automatically feels like your failure. And it isn't. Their journey is not your journey. Their timing is not your timing. Their abilities are not your abilities. Their chapter doesn't determine yours. The real competition is not the person standing beside you. It's the version of yourself that keeps making excuses, delaying action, seeking approval, and settling for less than you know you're capable of becoming. That's the person you need to defeat, not through hatred, through discipline every morning. You have a choice. You can repeat yesterday, or you can become slightly better than you were yesterday. You can continue making promises to yourself, or you can finally start keeping them. That's where your real rank is built, not in how many people admire you, not in how many people fear you, not in how many followers you have, not in how loudly people talk about you. Your real elevation is measured by what you do when nobody is watching. Can you stay disciplined when motivation disappears? Can you remain focused when nobody applauds? Can you keep going when the results are slow? Can you walk away from distractions even when they're tempting? Can you admit when you're wrong and have the courage to change? These are the moments that build character. You don't need to announce your transformation. You need to live it. Let your habits become stronger than your excuses. Let your consistency become stronger than your emotions. Let your goals become more important than temporary comfort. Because eventually, something remarkable happens. You stop needing to tell people that you've changed. They can see it. Your behavior changes. Your standards change. Your conversations change. Your priorities change. The things that once distracted you no longer impress you. The approval you once chased no longer controls you. The arguments you once needed to win no longer seem important. You become more selective with your time, because you finally understand that attention is one of your most valuable resources. And this is where you become dangerous in the healthiest sense. Not because you want to hurt anyone, but because you're no longer easily controlled by distractions, criticism, or validation. You have direction. You have standards. You have self-respect. You know what you're building. And when you know what you're building, you stop knocking on every door simply because it opened. You begin asking whether the room is even worth entering. That's maturity. That's elevation. That's becoming your own standard. So stop asking whether you're ahead of someone else. Ask whether you're ahead of who you were 6 months ago. Ask whether you're more disciplined than before. Ask whether you've become wiser. Ask whether you've healed. Ask whether you're finally doing the things you once said you would do, because that's the scoreboard that matters. You don't need to be above everyone. You need to rise above your old limitations. You don't need to prove you're special. You need to become undeniable through your actions. And when you do that, recognition becomes a side effect rather than the goal. People may eventually notice your confidence. They may notice your discipline. They may notice your silence. They may notice that you no longer react the way you used to. But by then, their recognition won't mean as much, because you will have already recognized yourself. You will know what you're capable of. You will know what you've survived. You will know what you're building. And most importantly, you will know that your value was never something other people had the authority to assign. Your highest standard begins the moment you decide to stop competing for validation and start competing with your own potential. That's when you stop chasing the rank. That's when you become the standard. Your next level requires a different version of you, not because the person you are right now is worthless, but because every new chapter demands new habits, new discipline, new courage, and a new willingness to leave behind what can no longer move forward with you. You cannot build a new life with the same mindset that kept you trapped in the old one. At some point, you have to stop asking when everything will change and start asking what you need to change within yourself. Because your future cannot be created by repeatedly returning to the same patterns that produced your past. Maybe you need to become more disciplined. Maybe you need to stop giving your energy to people who constantly drain you. Maybe you need to stop waiting for everyone to understand your vision. Maybe you need to stop allowing temporary emotions to make permanent decisions. Maybe you need to stop talking about what you're going to do and start doing it. This is where transformation becomes uncomfortable. Growth sounds exciting until it asks you to release something familiar. You may have to leave behind habits that once gave you comfort. You may have to distance yourself from conversations that keep you thinking small. You may have to stop seeking approval from people who only recognize the version of you they could control. And yes, that can feel lonely. But loneliness during transformation is not always a sign that something is wrong. Sometimes it is simply evidence that your priorities are changing. You are no longer interested in wasting hours proving yourself. You're no longer interested in chasing people who don't value you. You're no longer interested in repeating the same mistakes and calling them experiences. You're beginning to understand that your time is limited. Your attention is limited. Your energy is limited. So you have to become intentional about where you spend them. Your next level isn't waiting for you to become perfect. It's waiting for you to become consistent. You don't need to wake up tomorrow as a completely different person. You need to make different decisions repeatedly. One disciplined decision becomes a habit. One habit becomes a lifestyle. One lifestyle creates a different future. That's how transformation actually happens. Quietly, gradually. One decision at a time. And there will be days when you don't feel powerful. There will be days when doubt returns. There will be moments when the old version of you tries to pull you backward. That's normal. Growth doesn't mean you never struggle again. It means you stop allowing every struggle to control your direction. You can feel fear and still move. You can feel uncertain and still act. You can feel tired and still remain committed. You can experience rejection without allowing it to redefine your worth. That's strength. Your next level will require you to trust yourself more than you trust temporary circumstances. You have to understand that slow progress is still progress. A quiet season is still a season of preparation. A delayed opportunity isn't automatically a denied future, and a setback isn't proof that you should quit. Sometimes the path becomes difficult because you're being forced to develop the qualities necessary to handle what you're asking for. You say you want success. Can you handle discipline? You say you want freedom. Can you handle responsibility? You say you want confidence. Can you keep promises to yourself? You say you want a better life. Are you willing to release the habits that keep producing the old one? These are the questions that matter, so stop waiting for someone to rescue your potential. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. Stop waiting for everyone to believe in you. Begin before you're ready. Build before you're recognized. Move before you have complete certainty. Your future doesn't need a perfect version of you. It needs a committed version of you. And one day, you'll look back and realize that the person you thought you were becoming was actually the person you were always capable of being. You didn't suddenly become powerful. You finally stopped hiding your power behind excuses. You finally stopped shrinking to fit environments that couldn't appreciate your growth. You finally understood that your highest rank wasn't about being above anyone else. It was about becoming stronger than the limitations that once controlled you. So step forward. Leave the old identity where it belongs. In the past, take the lessons, take the wisdom, take the scars, but don't take the limitations. Your next chapter is waiting. And this time, you're not walking into it as the person who survived the past. You're walking into it as the person who learned from it, the person who rebuilt, the person who decided that enough was enough, the person who finally chose growth over comfort. And that version of you is only beginning.